Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday night Bible study. Wow, this is really loud. Okay, sorry, you guys, my phone. My phone was there. All right. So I am so glad to be able to be with you guys today as it is Mental Health Month, and we are talking about our mental health and what we need to do to make sure that we are well, right? Mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And the one that is probably the most neglected is our mental health. So before we even start, I want all of you guys who are online right now to please share this video with someone and let them know Bible study is starting. We are ready to go. Get on YouTube, get on Facebook, because Bible study is starting, and this month is all about our mental health. So share. You never know who might be dealing with something. So send it to everybody, right? As you see, I have an empty chair next to me because I am about to call up our guest speaker for today. But just before I do that, I just wanted to welcome you guys. Make sure that you share. We're going to go ahead and pray. Don't forget, we have our 34th anniversary revival starting on Wednesday, June 8th. We have revival starting on Wednesday, June 8th, and I want all of you guys to be here with us. So, I already had some people texting me, asking me when's the revival so that they can make sure that they're here, make the time. Those of you who are at work, please make time to be here at the revival. We don't have a revival every week or even every month at this church. But when we do, I really expect you guys to be here and to participate with us. This year, we will have our very own Dr. Bishop Serge Jerome, who will be opening up the revival for us on Wednesday, June 8th. And then we are going to have the great Dr. Phil Phillips from Fort Myers, who is going to take us through the rest of the revival. So I want you to be here, be with us so that you can be a part of what is going on. Okay. Revival. Again, don't forget to share. We are about ready to get started. Let us close our eyes and bow our heads as we go into prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you, Lord, for this time that we can come together and just call upon your name. We know that mental health is something that is very, very important, not only to our whole health as a person, but to our spiritual health. It is very hard to be in the right place spiritually when our minds are running rampant with negative thoughts and suicidal ideations. And so today, as we are opening up ourselves to learn more about our mental health, we ask that you would just be with us, surround us, and every person who needs to hear this tonight, that you would just be with them, make a way, Lord, in the middle of whatever situation that they might be going through. Have your way. We know that you alone are able. You alone are able. And so we speak healing right now in the name of Jesus. For anybody who might be dealing with any mental illness, we speak healing into their hearts, healing into their minds, healing into their spirits. Have your way, Lord. We honor you today and we give you all of the praise. In Jesus' name we pray. And everybody said, come on, y'all. If you're online, let me see my amens. Let me see the amens going up. Go ahead and type amen. And you know, if you're on Facebook, yes, thank you. Let's get our hearts going. Go ahead and click on those hearts if you're on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, please exit X out of the live chat, like this video. If you haven't subscribed to our page yet, please subscribe. You're probably wondering what is going on with my finger. Why is Pastor Lucy's finger blue? Y'all, I just broke my whole finger this week trying to open a window, okay? So that's what is going on with my finger. It's all wrapped up, but the Lord heals, amen? All right, so let's get into it. On Sunday when Pastor K was preaching, he threw out one of our statistics that I was going to start with, and so I want to remind you again that 20% of people anywhere and everywhere deal with or are dealing with, have dealt with mental illness. 20%. What is 20%? 20% is 1 in 5. Out of every 5 people, at least one person is dealing with a mental illness. So there are 2, 4, 6, 7 people in this room right now. And so right now, at least one of us, at least one, was, or will deal with a mental illness. 1 in 5. That's a lot. When you hear 20%, it doesn't sound like a lot, but think about 20% is 1 in 5. Out of every 5 people, 1 person. That means when you go to work and you work with more than 10 people, there are at least a handful of people at your job who are dealing with mental illness. What does that mean? Mental illness ranges. There's a range, right? The DSM ranges from functional to non-functional. So whenever we say mental illness, I feel like people always think we go all the way to the psychotic. We go all the way to the personality disorders, the mental breakdowns, schizophrenia, when actually only like 1% of people ever experience schizophrenia. It's very, very less than 1%. It's a very, very small number. Less than 1% of people who have mental illness, not just of everybody. Schizophrenia, I know every time we look at the news, we just had a lady in Miami who killed both of her children, and now they're saying that it had something to do with mental illness, but I haven't heard any diagnosis yet, and I haven't heard anything about, what that might be. For some reason, every time we see those, that's what we think mental health looks like. The people killing hundreds of people, parents killing their kids, that's mental illness. But it's not. Mental illness can be as small as, and it's not even small, but to us it seems minor, as what we're going to be talking about today, which is depression and anxiety. It can go from depression, anxiety, adjustment disorder. People don't think about that. I was talking to some people the other day, and we don't realize that adjustment disorder is in the DSM. It's a mental illness. When your life is changed all of a sudden, it's a lot to go through, and your mind has to catch up. Your emotions, your body has to catch up, and so it could send you to a place that is unhealthy for your mind, and that's a mental illness. So that's the first thing I want us to understand, is that mental illness is not just people who are on psychotic medications. It's not just the insane asylum. That's not mental illness. Mental illness is me, right? Mental illness is you. Mental illness is anybody who's ever dealt with depression, who's ever dealt with anxiety, who's ever had adjustment issues. If you ever gone through grief for a moment in your life, you had a mental illness. So first thing we want to do is kind of break down those negative stereotypes where we think that, whenever we say mental illness, seeing a counselor, seeing a therapist, then it means automatically we go to, oh, you're crazy. And that's definitely not it anymore. And so today we have the pleasure of being able to have our guest speaker who is here with us today. Hey, come on in, and I'm gonna call her up and we're gonna go ahead and get started. She is actually my supervisor, because as I'm getting my licensure, you have to do supervision. You have to have someone who is more experienced than you, helping you go through cases, making sure that you're doing what needs to be done. I actually have 2 supervisors. I have one at work, and then I have one for my licensure. And so for my licensure, I have Miss Katsia Hildebert. Did I say it right? Hildebert. And so I'm just going to read her bio, and we're going to go ahead and jump right in. And as I'm reading it, you can go ahead and come on up. We have the mic here. We're already live. We're online already, so we're ready. She has been in the mental health field for the past 18 years. She started as a case manager for South County. It's your mic. Go ahead and make yourself comfortable. For South County Mental Health Center in 2004. After completing her master's in mental health counseling, in 2007, she became a therapist working primarily with children and families. She has been working with children and families for the past 15 years, providing in-home services throughout the county for several community agencies. She currently manages a small program that primarily services Haitian families in the Lake Worth area. So if you are in the Lake Worth area and you are a Haitian family, wait, are you taking new clients? We know nobody is right now. All right, so for the summer, she may be taking some new clients, and so if you would like some more information, you can message us on our Facebook page and we'll get you the information. If you're on YouTube, you can email us at info@mysalemchurch.org. Welcome, Katsia. All right.
For having me.
Great. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Can you tell us, I guess you can't really tell us any more about you that I haven't already. If there's anything else you want to tell us.
Again, primarily worked with children and families and did a lot of in-home work. So when we think about our lower socially, economically disadvantaged families, primarily that has been the families that I've serviced. And even currently, I still prefer to work with those families. There's a greater impact there because it takes a while to gain their trust. But once you're able to gain that trust, you find that they will commit to the work, especially when they see someone from their culture and that looks like them, and so they're not as defensive.
And we know that in our community, in the Haitian community, the word, and we were just talking about that, mental health has such a negative stigma. And so for them to be able to maybe even communicate in their own language to somebody who might understand, might put them at ease to share more. I find now that we're having more programs that are focused on our Haitian families. Are they taking advantage of it though?
I think a lot of the agencies in the community are really working with the school centers to promote their programs and to let them know that they have credentialed bilingual therapists available to provide the service. Oftentimes, it's the first time that they've come into services, whether it's a behavior challenge or academic struggle, or maybe someone has recently passed away. The child at the school site is the one that typically will help to facilitate the services being provided to not just the identified child, but the family as a whole.
Exactly. And I think that that's kind of how it's been for a while. Like, the children are kind of like the gap closers, I guess.
Yeah,
trying to help their immigrant parents to acclimate to this society, this culture, and everything in it. So, I mean, if that works, if that's what we need to get them in the door, then that's what it is. So we have a list of questions here, but if you have questions online and you want to ask them, go ahead and type them in. I'll try to pay attention as much as possible. So if you have questions, go ahead and put it in and we'll try to get to them. If I feel like they're better than my questions, then I will definitely ask yours. So we're going to start off with, what is depression?
Okay. It'll present itself in many different ways, but in general, it's like a really low mood. Typically, the person is either sad, withdrawn, there's a loss of interest in their usual activities, such as work, They're not performing at school. They're not engaging socially with friends or peers. And that typically will last for a good 2 weeks. So there's like a significant shift, and not just the mood, but how they're interacting and performing overall.
Is there a difference? Because I know a lot of people will say, man, I feel so depressed, but they're not diagnosed with anything. So is that still depression, or should they be using another word?
You know, again, it's kind of relative to the person. You know, it's going through a diagnosing of someone who has depression has several steps. You know, there's criterias for that. They might feel that they're having some depressive symptoms, might not necessarily be diagnosed as having depression, because when life events happen that are not positive, let's say someone passes away or you lost a job, it is very normal reaction to feel down and a little withdrawn, but keeping an eye on how long is that impacting other areas, that's when we might start going into a criteria for depression.
And our sleeping disorders, we know that there are people who feel like they're unable to sleep, a lot of anxiety. Are any of those part of the criteria for depression?
So when it comes to sleep, I always recommend that a client goes to see their primary care physician to rule out any physical or any medical things that might be going on first, before going into a diagnosis that might be more mentally health based. So the first step is really to rule out any kind of medical things that might be happening.
Okay. And what do you think is the root cause of depression? We see a lot of children now being diagnosed with depression. We see a lot of older adults, like elderly people, being diagnosed with depression. What are some of the root causes of depression?
So with depression, again, some of that might be stemming from a situation, and then the prolonged reactions of what that looks like as far as being withdrawn, again, not engaging in their normal day-to-day activities can have an impact. So one is finding out what happened, what were the events that may have led to that, those depressive symptoms showing up, and then two, there might be a biological component. So for example, you may have a parent who has been chronically depressed for many, many years. However, they're still functioning, but there is a history there. They may be on medication, they may be using other coping strategies, but there has been some evidence and diagnosis of family history that has occurred.
And I'm so glad you just said that, because we have a question on, is depression genetic? And so if, just like you said, if your parent, one of your parents, or both of your parents have a history of chronic depression, is there a preventative measure that you should take, or if you feel fine, you should just continue on?
So, with depression, if there is, like we mentioned before, a parent or a family history, that doesn't automatically mean that you will be diagnosed with depression. It just means that you're at a higher risk for developing the depression, given a situation that might trigger, let's say, a depressed mood or exhibiting some of those depressive symptoms. So it's something to keep an eye on. It's not 100% guarantee that because your mom has depression, you will have depression. It's more of you're at a higher risk, and how are we keeping an eye on that and being proactive as far as how we manage and cope when life happens.
What I'm hearing is, parents, we need to talk to our kids, because what happens, especially in our culture, is that parents don't tell their kids these type of things because basically they don't ever want to be seen as weak or having gone through anything. And so it's very rare that you will see a Haitian parent tell their child, hey, I had depression when I was your age, or this happened and I've dealt with depression for a long, that doesn't happen. But I think as this new generation is coming up, it's important for us to be able to be open with our children and let them know, hey, because just like you said, they should be aware of, hey, maybe I should be looking out for triggers. If I do start feeling some type of way, I know my mom said that, maybe I can talk to her about it. It's so important for us to be open and willing to talk to our children about what is going on. Can depression be cured by praying or practicing one's faith?
So, there is no exact cure for depression. People will cope with it in many different ways. So we'll use stress as an example, right? Some people, they deal with stress by exercising. Some people deal with stress by meditating, and reading the Word. It all depends on how that's being utilized. Yes, it can definitely be a way to cope with the depressive symptoms. How I like to word it to clients is that you can rely on God and see a therapist. There isn't a one or the other. You can do both. You can do both. It's kind of like having a friend, right? There's things that you'll share with a friend, and they may give you some good friendly advice. However, if you are having a real clinical situation that you feel that you're not able to move on from, it might be a good idea to consider seeing a therapist. And you don't have to stick to one. If one therapist doesn't work out, you always have the option to see someone else until you find a good fit. It's like having a doctor, right?
I think that's probably the biggest thing with our older generation, is the fact that they feel, especially our older Christian generation. So to them, it's God or nothing. You're feeling sad, just go pray about it and you'll be fine. But just like you said, you can do both, right? We come to church and we still go to our doctor's appointments, right? God is a great healer, but we still take our high blood pressure medication and we still take our, diabetes medication. So you can do both. I think that's a great way to put it. And I think that for a long time, they weren't seeing that. It was, well, no, we don't need anything for that part, for the head up, just for the neck down. From the neck down, we'll go see the doctor. Everything from the head up, we'll just try to figure it out ourselves.
And to credit to church and the Black community in general, not just Haitian culture, but Black culture, the church has always been a place of refuge, a place of safety, a place of guidance. So it is natural to want to seek pastoral counseling. We do have people of the faith who have the experience, such as yourself, who are clinically trained, because it does require a specific training to really get into the work, because we want to make sure that we are operating ethically when we are servicing our clients, in essence, because it goes beyond the church member. Now you're seeking them in a professional manner. So we want to make sure that those individuals, of course, are equipped. So sometimes it may be the pastor that is trained that can provide that service within the church, and you might not necessarily need to step outside for that service.
We have a question here that says, what do you think would be the a good approach on how to invite your older parents to group therapy?
So, one of the things we also want to be mindful and aware and give grace to is that our older Haitian parents or the elderly population, they were not necessarily raised to share feelings.
Yeah,
That is something that
Yeah.
in America is very basic, it's very foundations. When we talk about social emotional learning and knowing who we are, that is pushed in children from the time they start preschool to identify feelings and to connect what triggers those feelings. Although it sounds very elementary, those are things and skills that our parents did not grow up with having. So we have to give them grace. If we don't know how to necessarily identify feelings, how are we going to sit in group therapy? So sometimes you have to start really slowly by just being able to express and put a feeling to what's being said.
That's good. I think that's really good because that might be pushing them a little past their their limits or what they can really handle. So that's good. Maybe just starting talking to them about feelings, going back to the feeling sheet with them and seeing how they can express it because I don't see how they're going to be able to. Granted, I think that she's talking about a family group therapy, but even then, they didn't share their feelings with us when we were younger. Why would they share them with us now? You know, it's still hard.
It is very challenging, and even those who are aware and have those foundations, being able to be so vulnerable and open to someone that you don't know can be very, very hard for individuals, especially as an adult.
Okay, and I'm going to go on to our next question because I think that this is one that a lot of people worry about, and this is why they never want to be diagnosed or labeled with anything. If you had depression once, but you were cured or you just were able to get through it or past it, can you have it again or can it come back? Will you always have depression?
No. So again, there, what is it? Life has peaks and valleys. So sometimes everything is fine and then something happens and we might have a low point. And then figuring out how to bounce back from that and getting back to those peaks. So the constant thing is change. We won't live there. However, I will interject that how we cope will determine how long we stay in those valleys.
If someone is dealing with depression or thinks they might be depressed but is not really sure because they're not sure of all of the criteria, what are some of the signs and symptoms of depression?
Okay. I'll use work life, right? So something has happened, whatever event. Let's say someone has passed away suddenly, close to you. But at work, you were high performing, never really missed a day of work, always on time, had somewhat of a social life. Your weekends were not spent at home, like you had a work-life balance. And then now the change is, Monday morning rolls its head and you call out Monday, you call out Tuesday, you barely make it to work Wednesday, you're not really focused, your workload seems unbearable, but it hasn't changed. Not picking up the phone when friends or family call, sending them to voicemail, you're just not yourself. So that is when, for a couple days, however, again, when it starts to go into a week, 2 weeks, that starts to get a little significant. and that might be a time to, one, you might want to see your primary to rule out anything medical if you choose, or go straight to a mental health professional for the service to kind of let them know, hey, I don't know what's going on. Can I get some service, and how can you assist?
Okay. So that would be the time to get help.
Yes.
If you see it going 2 weeks and on, you want to ask for help.
Right. Or even sooner, because if your behaviors are starting to feel a little bit more extreme, and sometimes the friend or family might be the one to say, hey, I think you should get some help. This is what I'm seeing. And through that conversation, you might be the one to help facilitate that process.
And hopefully you have someone around you who can be that honest and tell you exactly what it is that they're seeing.
Yes.
Okay. Someone says, can you be depressed even if you have everything you need? Like you feel like you're in a good place and you feel like you shouldn't be, like you don't have a reason to be depressed. Can you still be depressed?
So one of the things that I've heard in our culture is, well, you have everything, what do you have to be depressed about? Money and things don't bring happiness.
No, we sure know that.
Right? It doesn't bring more happiness. Money is a tool that is used to resolve things and to pay for things. It is not something that truly, happiness is really through those relationships. How do we feel about ourselves? That's where the happiness lies. So, repeat the question.
No, yeah, so can you be depressed even if you have everything you need?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. How many times have we watched the news and, millionaires, billionaires have
Celebrities.
attempted or completed, death by suicide?
And then the last question for depression is it possible, and it's probably going to be for anxiety also, is it possible to just get over it? Because you hear a lot of times people who are dealing with people who might be experiencing depression will sometimes tell them, just stop.
I think people's responses and the get over it, just stop it, even the good vibes, it's like positive toxicity language. It's not necessary. I think we as a society sometimes we feel uncomfortable, and this is not what we're used to with this person. And so in thinking that we're helping the situation, we say those things. I don't think that we're necessarily aware of how impactful, because so I'm a therapist, so there's something that I do or don't do in session with clients, which is if I have a client and the client is emotional, they start to cry, the normal reaction for most people is to give them the tissue, give them something to stop the crying.
Stop, yeah.
Not realizing that in that moment when they're crying and they're sharing, that might be the only time that they've been able to do that. So when we do that, we are not allowing them to express themselves. It can be a little uncomfortable. However, in doing that, it can also come off as being dismissive.
That's so funny. I did that today. I wasn't in a session, but somebody was in my office and they were crying, and I'm like, tissues, where's the tissue?
I have it there, and they know when they want to reach for that, if they reach for it. But if I initiate it, then I may stop that process for them. Yeah.
That's good. So why do depression and anxiety sometimes feel like they go hand in hand?
Well, sometimes it can be anxiety provoking because there's there's some mixed feelings happening there. So feeling sad and feeling down, you might experience a trigger that heightens your, your sensory, that may drive the anxiety. They both, you can be duly diagnosed. You can have both. That is common. Yeah, that's definitely possible.
Yeah, it just seems very common that you will see them together. Whenever someone is diagnosed with depression, then it's usually assisted by anxiety and vice versa. What is anxiety disorder?
So, anxiety really is kind of like a grouping of one, I notice, is a lot of the sensory. So there typically is like a trigger for that person that causes some kind of heightened stress or fear of something may or may not happen. So there's like a heightened sense of fear or nervousness that comes with that. Whereas with the depression, that's not necessarily the case. Those symptoms are, they look different.
How is having an anxiety disorder different from just regular anxiety?
Again, it's, the process for diagnosing that is a group of symptoms, the duration of how long that's been happening, in order to come to that diagnosis, because we all have a little bit of anxiety, and sometimes it's when good things happen, not just bad things.
Excitement?
Yes.
So can the feelings of excitement sometimes be mistaken for anxiety?
Perhaps. But sometimes it's a little muddled there. It's a little muddled. So, for example, if you know you're getting a new job, you've got this $10,000 raise, you're excited, but you're anxious because you don't know what comes with that. And it's a new place. It's a new, new responsibilities. So there, again, that heightened fear of the unknown is there, although you're excited about it, but there may still be a little bit of, anxiety there about it.
I think with anxiety, it's probably one of those things that is the hardest to describe. I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't know, I just have this feeling inside, or I feel real jittery and I can't calm down, or my mind is constantly racing or constantly going, or it's just hard to describe. Could you describe anxiety? Like if someone is saying, well, I don't know if this is anxiety or not.
It tends to be sensory based. So one of the things I want, our listeners and viewers to kind of take away today, if they don't take anything else away, is do not go on Google and Google your symptoms and because
no WebMD.
Correct. We really want to leave that to the professionals because it might sometimes it's just a normal reaction. But then again, to say, do I have it? That's a process. And I highly encourage everyone to leave that to the professionals because Google is not
accurate.
No, it's not an accurate assessment. It doesn't ask you about your history. It doesn't go into detail. It doesn't give you that personal one-on-one service.
Absolutely. I think that just going off of what you just said, we want you guys to understand that everything we're talking about, I want to give you something to think about. And so if you've been experiencing any of these feelings, talk to somebody. Go see your physician, find out, make sure it's not anything medical. Let them tell you, hey, maybe you need to see someone else. So if you've been having any of these feelings, you're not sure, you've kind of been brushing it off. Some people have been brushing off these things for years, these feelings for years. I don't know, I just get down sometimes. And when I get down, I don't leave the house. And to them, it's just normal because this is what they've been doing. And we're here to tell you that it's not. Get help.
Yeah.
So is a panic attack the same as an anxiety attack?
So with the panic attacks, they're both have elicited a physical response. However, the panic attack is very, very specific. Oftentimes, people will report they feel like they're having a heart attack. So typically, one would encourage medical professional care to rule out a heart attack because it may feel the same because they're getting the pressure, the racing heartbeat. Those are very classic signs of a panic attack.
Yes.
Some people even have a little difficulty breathing.
Yes,
because
I've
they're
definitely heard
experiencing
that. To the point where they feel like, just like you said, you feel like you're gonna die. Like I can't breathe.
Right.
And it's a lot going on. The heart racing, sometimes the sweaty, the cold and clammy hands, and a panic attack, an anxiety attack, either one of them, it just a lot of sensory things going on.
Absolutely.
A lot of sensory things, and at the same time, your brain is thinking, what is happening? What is going on? Am I dying? And which is probably going to make it worse.
Right.
But what most people don't realize is that if someone is having a panic attack or an anxiety attack, it's probably not their first one. They usually know what's going on with them, if it's not their first one. Right. So we learn in mental health first aid to always ask them, do you know what's going on? Do you know what's happening to you? Because usually they'll be able to tell you, yeah, I'm having a panic attack or I'm having an anxiety attack. But you looking in, or if it's your first time, you don't know.
Right. And then with the panic attack, sometimes people may have a specific phobia, So there might be, I know a lot of people say, well, I'm afraid of crowds, but they're still out and about in crowds all the time. But people have debilitating fears of being in crowds to the point where it renders them almost somewhat paralyzed out in public. So that may elicit a panic attack for that individual.
And I think that's when it's really good to know yourself, kind of know what you're dealing with and what's going on, so you can know if it's something like that or something else. But the only way you can is, I guess, if some people don't even realize it. I think it's after they're talking about what's going on and how it started, what the trigger was, and they're like, oh yeah, you know what? Every time I'm in that situation, that's exactly what happens. They don't even realize it.
Or it's built up over time, right? So gradually it has escalated.
Getting worse. Mm-hmm. Okay. What can someone do if they are, I guess we already said that. If you're experiencing if you're experiencing a panic attack, then you should probably first call 911. Make sure it's not a heart attack. Make sure it's not something physical. And then if it's not, they'll check everything. And if they don't find anything, they'll probably say, well, it was probably a panic attack. And you should probably talk to somebody about that.
Right.
All right, so how can someone deal or cope with anxiety? What are some things that people can do to deal and cope with anxiety?
It's really specific to the individual. You know yourself best. You're the expert on yourself. So for some people, being able to take deep breaths, some deep breathing techniques, is able to, help them pass through that panic attack. However, there's some people, they're not with the breathing. They don't want to breathe. It might be it's like a sensory skill where to help bring students, typically I've used this with younger people, like high school students, to be able to decrease the level of anxiety or if they're going into a panic attack state or have been experiencing that, is to switch the focus and bring it back to sensory. So, 5 things that you see, and then you talk them through and they identify something that you hear, something that you smell or feel. Once we are able to shift the focus and bring it back to sensory, that will help to, de-escalate the situation and kind of bring them back to their balance, their homeostasis.
I know that you said that the breathing can help. We actually did breathing exercises on Sunday to open up our month of mental health. And so I was just telling everybody how important it is to learn how to do deep breathing. But tell me about imagery. How well does that work in a situation like this?
So guided imagery, you want to make sure that the client is comfortable walking through an imaginary situation. So some people, you'll have them close their eyes. They have to be okay with doing that. They might want to do it eyes open. Again, it connects the sensory to bring balance and to decrease the heightened state, because you're providing the narrative. It's a soothing, relaxing narrative for them. And so as you're speaking, they're visualizing, there's some hearing things, there's some auditory things that they can identify in the passage, smell. So for example, you might talk about a walk through the forest. How do you, what do you see in the forest? And then, you might hear birds chirping, right? There might be a cool wind or a cool breeze. Again, it really kind of has the person stay with you in order to, come down from that elevating or heightened state. It's a real cool tool. There's guided imagery, narratives everywhere that people can, use.
That sounds like it might even work for a meditation too, just to help you wind down after a long day.
Yeah.
Using some guided imagery just to kind of close your mind. I was speaking to a client who was having some issues winding down after a day. And so after any day, it just took her a really long time to go to sleep. And that was one of the things that we said, okay, well, let's think of some really things that calm you. What's a place that calms you down? And kind of doing that like at least 30 minutes to an hour before you're going to sleep to help you start to calm down and also to stop using the phone.
So it is a mindfulness. It's a mindfulness technique.
Yes, mindfulness.
Being present. That's the basis of mindfulness, is being present and pulling in those, that sensory awareness in the here and now.
I only have time, because it's already 7:55, so I only have time for one of my general mental illness questions. So I want to ask this one. What are some general activities that an individual can do more of or less of in response to caring for their mental health?
Okay. A big easy one is decrease the social media. It's very
Decrease social media, people.
It's very stimulating. Some people, they wake up in the morning, they're on it at work, they get off work before bed. You might want to try to give yourself a dedicated time.
Take a break.
Yes. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to have a day off and do nothing.
Yes.
That is taking care of you. You can't, pour from an empty cup?
Yes.
We give and give and give, and I think sometimes we are guilty of not stepping back and making sure that we're okay because we're so busy taking care of everybody else.
I will definitely take that one on and continue saying that one. The stepping back from social media, because I think that you're right. It is very stimulating, especially the younger you are. And for some reason, the younger you are, the more they want to be on all of the social media platforms, which is probably not adding to your mental health, not adding positively to your mental health. Right. And so exercise is another good one. Just keep yourself you know, they say that the endorphins when you
Yes, it
exercise.
releases endorphins, which is good dopamine and feel good energy throughout your body.
Yes, even when you don't feel like it, take a walk, right?
Yes.
Get your heart rate up, take a walk, and let those endorphins start, the dopamine start flowing, and get you a little high, right?
And really just figuring out things that you enjoy doing. You know, so there's things like, as children we love to do, which, you know, one is coloring. You know, there's all these therapeutic mandala type coloring books, or there's
Adult coloring books.
there's
My
apps.
best friend has
There's apps
a lot
where
of
you
them.
can tap and color as well.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some free apps, so check that out on your phones. But knowing what works for you. But I think we really need to get in the habit of taking a break. Use your days off. Take your vacation time, even if you're not going anywhere.
That's good. Use your days off. I am definitely guilty of using my days off to do work. And my husband is always telling me, like, do you ever just stop? Like, don't do laundry, don't do anything, just sit down. But I just feel like, man, if I don't do it, then it's just gonna be piled up for tomorrow. And he's like, who cares? And I'm like, no, I cannot. So that goes for me and for you. Use your days off to really just relax and take a break.
Yes.
Like we were just saying before, take a break.
I have moms who are always like, oh, well, you know, I can't take the time off. And I said, listen, when the kids are at school, it's okay to call out a day just for you. While they're at school, you can have that as your do nothing, go get ice cream, chill at the house, you know, watch
Sounds
a
so
movie.
nice.
You know, so those are ways to be able to kind of help balance that out. It might not be the weekend because everybody's home and you have so much to do, but a day during the week when everybody's at work and everybody's at school, that might be the perfect time to have a little alone time every now and then.
And the one day is not going to kill you.
Yeah.
That one day off is not, the world's not going to stop turning. You will be fine. If you don't take the time and you end up burning yourself out, then you won't be able to do anything anyway. So take the time off. All right. That is going to close our session for this afternoon. Thank you so much, Katya, for being with us. And as we're closing today, we're going to throw up our link for offering. But I also want to remind you of a lot of things that we talked about today. It's just if you are someone who's been experiencing any symptoms of depression, or you've just been feeling really down and it's been going on for a while and you're not sure of what's happening, you're just crying and you don't know why, talk to somebody. Talk to your physician. They will lead you to a mental health counselor, and you can really start talking about what's going on. If you've been having a lot of those sensory feelings, worry and fear, and just anxiety, and they're not going away, talk to somebody. It is time for us to really start taking care of our mental health. And you can do both. Right? You can do both. You can, pray, you can meditate, you can read your word, you can believe that God is still in control and still take care of your mental health just like you would take care of your physical health. And you will see that as you do both, you'll feel even better. You will feel even better. Your faith is a great supporter of you to be able to go out and just help you to be well mentally and in any emotionally, socially, and all of the other lees. I just want to thank you guys for watching tonight, for being with us. I want to thank my supervisor, Katya, for being here tonight. If you want to learn more about her program, you can email us at info@mysalemchurch.org if you're looking for something for a children, right?
Yep, children.
Okay, for a child, the summer is coming. They will have some spots open. You can email us, and I will send you the information. So, anything else?
It's a no-cost service.
It's free, y'all.
It's free, and I just want to say mental health is not a destination. It's a journey.
Yes.
So there's peaks and valleys.
While you were saying that, how old? What's children?
So we start what, 4 to 17.
Okay, 4 to 17. If you have anyone 4 to 17 who is looking for services, you have parents who you know are looking for services for their children, email us. We'll give you the information so that you can contact the program. I love that saying, and I'm going to go ahead and steal that. Mental health is not a destination, it is a journey. I pray that you all go in all of his peace and all of his love. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and I'll see you guys next week. We will have another guest speaker, and we will continue our talk on mental health. Be blessed. Have a wonderful evening. Bye, everyone.